What a few days it's been for trailers. We've got the upcoming Prometheus trailer, the kind of prequel to Alien. We've had the Dark Knight Rises first full trailer again, which is a sequel to one of the most popular films in recent years. And now we get the we start again. Now we get the trailer to The Hobbit, which is the prequel of sorts to The Lord of the Rings. Now, I should preface this by saying that I was a massive Tolkien fan as a child. The Hobbit was the first story that I really remember being read to me, and certainly the first full book I remember reading. So, The Hobbit has a real place in my heart. So, I'm a little bit cautious about this film. As much as I loved The Lord of the Rings adaptations by Peter Jackson, I was a little bit on the fence about it because Peter Jackson has went and he didn't really want to direct it. He had like Guillermo del Toro, and he was meant to be in it, and then had all sorts of production problems, and he had to leave, and so you start to think, well, Peter Jackson then comes in and fills that void, but does he really want to do it? So that's why I'm a little bit, not entirely convinced by it. Also, they are expanding the story to include stuff from the appendices from Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and I don't know if they're doing anything from the Silmarillion, but they're certainly bringing things in from other Tolkien sources to expand the story, like the Necromancer and Mirkwood and all that sort of stuff. So they are maybe going to change the tone of it. They're going to change the tone of it, I think, to be darker. The actual story, a lot of people go back, read The Lord of the Rings or see The Lord of the Rings and then go and try and read The Hobbit, and they're a little bit disappointed because The Hobbit was written for children, and it is a much lighter tale. It's not all about the end of the world, as Lord of the Rings is. You don't have that level of gravitas to it. But I think it's much more fun, I think, and it's a great set. There's a great sense of adventure and just this wonderful, wonderful world that Tolkien created. So they are bringing the tone to be more in line with Lord of the Rings, because you've had this trilogy that Peter Jackson's made, which is all about life or death, and you've got The Hobbit, which is about an adventure. So they're bringing in elements from Lord of the Rings and other sources to try and, I think, connect it to Lord of the Rings in a more concrete way, other than Bilbo finding the ring, and to bring the tone more in line with Lord of the Rings, so that there feels like there's more at stake. From the trailer, I've been also watching the production diaries. From the trailer, first of all, yeah, the look of it looks great. Great to see Ian McKellen back as Gandalf, just amazing. I think a lot of people won't realise the difference between Gandalf the Grey and Gandalf the White, as we see later on in Lord of the Rings, but there is a difference in his character, there's a difference in his abilities, and yeah, I think Bilbo looks fantastic. Yeah, just all in, it does visually look quite appealing. I think it's quite clear from the trailer though that they've not really done a lot of visual effects work on it yet, because you didn't get any sprawling battles, and there's the Battle of the Five Armies and all that sort of stuff, the spiders and Mirkwood, all those things. No mention of smog, so we didn't get any of that, but it certainly whets the appetite to see this film. It's just a shame we have to wait a year for it. We would have already have seen the first part of it by now, if it hadn't been for all of these delays. I'm really hopeful that it will be good. I'm sure it will be good. Whether it will be amazing like the Lord of the Rings was, because when we went to see Lord of the Rings, at least when I went to see it, I only had the Lord of the Rings cartoon that Ralph Bakshi did as any sort of visual reference for Lord of the Rings, and within like cinema. And I actually really like the animated Lord of the Rings cartoon. A lot of people criticise it, and it rightly so in a lot of ways, but I still really enjoy the animated cartoon. But we went to see Lord of the Rings. I remember Fellowship of the Ring. It started, the swooping camera came down over the foot of Mount Doom and showed you the armies of the elves and men fighting against Sauron's minions, and my jaw hit the ground. It's one of the most uh, surprising experiences I've had in the cinema. It was like, wow, I've never seen anything like this. I think 10 years on, I don't think that can really happen again in that same way, really. So I think they're going to have to wow us in a different way. And I don't know if they'll be able to do that. It's just the technology was really coming together then to do that sort of stuff on such an epic scale. Now so many films have come out, and quite a few of them quite poor, but you still get an epic scale of it. Um, Peter Jackson is a director that I really admire. I love a lot of his. I love a lot of his work. I remember watching Bad Taste when I was a kid, and it really inspired me. Like, this guy just made this movie on his own with some friends. That's what I want to do. And Brain Dead or Dead Alive, I think it's known in some places. Loved that film as well. Very, very funny. Great zombie flick. Great companion piece, I think, to The Evil Dead, actually. And Heavenly Creatures, I think, is a beautiful film. And I enjoyed The Frighteners. And I enjoyed King Kong as well. I thought it was too much of a self-indulgent project, that was too long, but I still enjoyed King Kong. So I've no doubt that Peter Jackson still got it as a director, but I do worry that he's getting a little bit like James Cameron, and George Lucas, where he's becoming too obsessed with the technology. This whole 48 frames, I don't know if you're not aware of it, The Hobbit's going to be shot, or has been shot, in 48 frames per second. And Peter Jackson said, I've shown footage from these cameras to certain people, and they've said it's like looking out of a window. It's so realistic. And yeah, it is realistic. It will be far more realistic, but it won't be cinematic. I've shot at 50 frames per second. I know roughly what 48 frames per second is going to look like, and I don't like the aesthetic of it. I think there's a reason why film operates around about the 24 frames per second mark, and it's because it gives a film a dreamlike, escapist quality to it. And I don't think seeing something that looks like Gandalf's in your living room is really going to make the experience better. I'm going to do a video on that itself, and I will do one. But so anyway, the trailer shows you a lot of things. It shows you the Riddles in the Dark chapter with Gollum in the cave with Bilbo when he finds the ring. It shows you all the dwarves. It shows Gandalf fighting someone, which is interesting. I tried to pause it to see what it was he was fighting. I think that's going to come from the extra material that's been put in to do with the Necromancer and Mirkwood, and when all the wizards turn up to fight him, which is going to be brilliant to see because it's only implied in the books. You don't actually really hear much about it. And yep, it looks great. I'm really looking forward to it. And next year's just going to be incredible. With the trailers we've been talking about, Dark Knight Rises, The Hobbit, and Prometheus. We've got 3 films, and normally, I'm not a big fan of sequels and things like that, but we've got 3 films within established franchises which are really important. If The Dark Knight Rises works, we finally have a wonderful superhero trilogy. We've never had an entire trilogy, which has been brilliant in my opinion. If The Hobbit works, we've got something which is an iconic novel which has finally been brought to the screen for millions of fans all around the world. And if Prometheus works, then it bodes well for Ridley Scott's Blade Runner sequel, and also just if it ties into the origin of the Alien story, that could be very exciting, although I do have some qualms about it. I don't really want to find out too much about the alien origin, if you know what I mean. Anyway, I'm talking about other films now, all about The Hobbit. Go and check out the trailer. I'll leave a link down below. Really psyched for this, but we'll just have to see if it lives up to people's estimations. I hope it does.